Ray is the revolutionary system that helps you track your catalog and pay artist royalties using artificial intelligence. Through machine learning, Ray is able to analyze the many different databases and standards throughout the music industry and intelligently connect the dots between them, cleaning up the mismatched metadata, finding missing metadata, and fixing errors that can prevent you and your artist from being paid. Ray is able to clean up metadata faster and more accurately than any other way, and it only gets smarter as it goes, making sure you and your artists are quickly and accurately compensated from digital outlets. So, who is Ray for? Ray is for labels striving to pay rights holders and properly assess the value of works over time. Ray is for publishers wanting to identify all the recordings of their composition in the marketplace and pay rights holders while properly valuing their catalog. Ray is for distributors wanting to exceed DSP metadata standards without the expense of manual quality control. Use Ray when purchasing a catalog to update the works with new and accurate metadata, minimizing downtime on digital services. Simply put, if your business involves the transaction of metadata, Ray is the game-changing tool you've been waiting for. Your digital assets and the creative work of your artist don't have to disappear into the black hole of unpaid music royalties. Let Ray shine a light on your catalog as it travels through the digital marketplace to ensure you and your artist get every penny you are owed. Now that's simple. That's Ray.
In my opinion, that video is about as excited about metadata as you can get. So thank you very much for watching. But now I'd like to show you a little bit of, or we'd like to show you a little bit of Ray in action here. So some of you may have seen this site before. It's a live site that you're welcome to come to whenever you'd like, and we'd be happy to give you access to any codes to use the site. But we'll go ahead and go through a few examples here. But so above all else, Ray is data integration technology. We really don't even consider ourselves necessarily a data sourcing company. So the thing to keep in mind is that you can use Ray to integrate any sort of silos of data or information that you may have. But to prove and build out our tech, we applied Ray to all of the music metadata we could get our hands on. And then we made that resolved data available via API, which a lot of folks are taking advantage of today. And we sort this data in 3 different ways. A lot of it is publicly available metadata. We do have some private deals with data providers. And we also are lucky enough to receive a lot of data from our clients. And while you can access all of this data via API, where there's documentation right here you can check out, you can also go ahead and enter works here and try it yourself. You can really put any sort of combination of metadata here to get some results here. And Chris and I were thinking about what a good example would be to show today. Chris?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking to honor Elon Musk with his tweet after the SEC ruling. Hopefully not too inappropriate, but naughty by nature, OPP. I don't know if you saw Elon's tweet or not, but it was, like bringing it back from 1991.
Excellent. All right, so we're going to try this particular track out and enter a demo code here again, which I'd be happy to get anybody access to these codes after the call. And you'll see just with song title and artist combination, 21 results return. So if you had an actual ISRC that you were looking up to, that result set would only pertain to the representations of this work that actually carry that ISRC. But we searched for this combination of metadata. So we got all of these results. And what you're seeing here is kind of an amalgamation of all of the different data sources that I talked about earlier. And what has happened here is that the algorithm has inferred consensus from those data sources around what the best representation of that work should be. And this data is updated constantly as new data is added to the system. And then also what you'll notice about the data is that it is transformed to meet a very specific standard. So we have our own internal standard that we transform data formatted to. But really, we can meet a lot of different standards, whether they're internal standards that a client may have, or standards that another party may have in place. So that is all learned by the algorithm over time, and the data can be compliant with all of those different ways that it needs to be seen. So in addition to just the master recording here, you'll see that it's also been linked to its underlying musical works. So you have the ISWC as well, and you have all of the writers here with their IPI information, as well as the publishing as well. And I will hand it off to Chris, excuse me, to talk a little bit about how we are able to get such high quality matches.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Lindsay. Hopefully towards the end, we'll have time to dig more into the tech if you guys would like, but for the presentation, we're keeping it pretty high level. But what I wanted to describe is, what is happening here. So, we think of music metadata as a graph of densely connected relationships. And, instead of ignoring those relationships, we're actually leveraging them to make more informed matching decisions. So as any abstract data layer is loaded onto this graph, Ray begins to learn the relationships between those different entities, like Paul McCartney or Paul James McCartney, who is also related to the Beatles, right? And who is a writer and plays bass and guitar and piano and all this stuff. So Ray begins to learn those relationships. So another key to high quality matches is partly to do with our pre-processing and training the algorithm itself. We do have a team of musicologists that will tag the data and also as you or our clients use Ray, those decisions as to what is right and what is wrong also tie in and train the algorithm itself. I always love to show the parsing piece using classical because you can, there's so much more data. Lindsay, let's do you can do automated examples. If you want to type something, let's do, so you can see how it's recognizing, okay, this is a key signature, this is a catalog number, and so then it will begin to, instead of trying to match like a really long string, like Symphony number 3 in E flat major, Opus 55, Eroica, Movement number 1, Allegro con brio, right? It's going to match it tempo to tempo, symphony to symphony, number 3 to number 3, right? Nickname or Eroica to other Eroica. So that's how we're able to use matching to also clean data. So it's one thing to enhance the data, take a master recording to publishing, but we can also use it to make sure Allegro con brio is sentence casing as opposed to title casing, which is incorrect in the way it appears a lot of the time.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you for that background there. So this demo site is just currently available for anybody to use, as well as the data is available via API. And as I mentioned, we'd be happy to assist in integrating via API and providing you demo codes to test it out. But we also wanted to tell you and show you how some other folks are taking advantage of this data and what the results have looked like for them. So we're going to go into 4 different Ray implementations that we've seen great success with over the last few months. The first is catalog enhancement. The second has to do with catalog acquisitions, folks using Ray as a layer between the transaction of metadata. The third is that we're going to look at is quality control for distribution. So Ray serving as a compliance layer for metadata before going into the marketplace. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how other third parties, basically businesses that rely on having high quality metadata, are able to use Ray to power their businesses, along with folks utilizing blockchain as well as smart contracts. So for catalog enhancement, I'm going to walk you through a data set, partly data that we received from a client, as well as the data that we were able to return for them. And so, we just looked at a lot of data on the demo site. So this is only what I'm showing right here are just a few stats on some data points, but keep in mind, we provide a lot more data than just this to the client. So you'll see they delivered over 30,000 works. And, we ran through Ray for the first time, got about a 10% match rate, a few XWCs, some ISRCs that appeared on multiple collections, got a decent number of IPIs, but knew that there was more for the algorithm to pick up on. Which is why July was a little bit more of an exciting month. The match rate that you'll see here increased up to 25.5%. The number of unique ISRCs tripled, so did the number of collections that those ISRCs returned on there. So you can see the kind of rinse and repeat iterative process of the algorithm, getting fed new data, finding new relationships, getting input from the client, really helped to improve these results. Then in August, that match rate went up to 33.7%. And you'll notice too, the IPIs returned actually start to decrease. And this is because the algorithm is now picking up on some false positives, which basically means where a writer may have been represented in two ways because their name was spelled one way in one database and another way in another. The algorithm has now picked up on, okay, these are actually the same writer, and that there is either a discrepancy in the IPI there or that it's actually the same and we should merge those records. So seeing this number go down is actually a really good thing, and it brings a lot of normalization to the data that the client was looking at. And then this past month, you'll see that we had another large increase in the total percentage of works matched, which is up to 56%, and definitely going to continue to grow month over month. And then you'll also notice too, some of these numbers have started to taper off, meaning that we're becoming more and more confident that this is in fact the data that is available in the marketplace. Because what we find is sometimes it is just as valuable to say, hey, here's new metadata that we found, as it is to say, hey, there isn't metadata here. This is a null value because something hasn't been registered properly, or this doesn't exist. You haven't inputted this data into this standard or registered it in this way. And sometimes proving or validating that there is no metadata can be a really important thing, because that's where you can then start to take action in changing that for the better. The next example that we're going to look at is catalog acquisitions. A lot of times what we've seen is that when folks are acquiring catalogs, they're somewhat unsure of the metadata that they're going to receive. And this metadata is really the only representation of these intangible assets that you're purchasing. So it's kind of a nice idea to be able to run that data you receive from the seller through Ray before you even get started ingesting it, re-releasing it, just so that you have great metadata right off the bat, and you can treat that new asset in the way that it deserves to be. So the process that we have set up with our clients and seen work here is, of course, we receive the data for the client. Looks totally different. Every catalog is just incredibly different, as you know. The first thing we do is, of course, just run it through Ray and enhance it with that additional metadata that we've looked at. And then third, we add that new ownership information. So we take your CMP line information, your new distribution information, whatever it may be. Maybe we update genre, things like that. Anything that you need added to that data, we can do in a bulk fashion. Then we transform that metadata to meet a template for distribution. So this could be, an internal template that you need the data to be in this format, or maybe you need it in a certain format to deliver to your distributor. That this is part of the process. We clean it up, we transform it, format it so that it's a really seamless process for you, so that at the end of the day, you're minimizing any downtime that you may have on digital services or any downtime that you may experience on collecting on these new assets. And then we deliver the data back to the client, of course. And then afterwards, we scan the marketplace for missed takedowns. So what that basically means is that sometimes what we'll see is we'll take the ISRCs and notice that there are two distributors for an ISRC, because maybe a takedown has been missed in the past. So this is a really good opportunity to find missed revenue. And during an acquisition, this is certainly the time to get ahead of these things and handle them right off the bat. And that's a little bit of what the catalog acquisition workflow looks like. I'm going to hand it over to Chris for one of our probably most popular use cases of Ray, which is quality control for distribution.
Cool. Thank you, Lindsay. So I kind of got into distribution there a little bit at the end of that catalog acquisition piece. But with Lindsay, I'll need to advance the slides if you don't mind. Perfect. So with the distribution, this really comes about as a result of DSP standards. So DSPs like Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google, etc. They are saying, hey, we want this data to be this way. So when you give us this data, it has to meet this standard. And some DSPs are actually, they have a scorecard system. And if one in particular, if you get 3 strikes, you're out, you're not immediately out, but yeah, your content is not going live on time. And then if the trend continues, then of course, that period gets longer and you will eventually be out. So you have to, as we know, have to deliver data to DSP that is correct. And that's a great thing because, that's part of why we got here, why we needed this metadata cleanup in general, is because there was little quality control, in the data that was being placed into the marketplace. So Ray is here to help meet those standards. And part of that is cleaning up, so correcting that which is wrong. Another part is enhancing. So if, I know some DSPs are now requiring writers and even publishers or APIs, which is awesome. So Ray is able to enhance the data as well, so to add data that didn't exist before. And let's advance those slides, Lindsay. So we take the data that we get from our clients, which could be in a multiple of ways. It could be via a DDEX, it could be another XML, proprietary XML format. A lot of times it's a CSV, even a TXT file. But we really prefer that folks use our API. And it's been cool to see that adoption as well. So just as I was describing, we enhance the data, we transform the data, and then we are able to let our clients know, okay, you might want to put eyes on these tracks. It meets the standard you're wanting to hit, but this DSP may actually flag it, right? May actually ding you on it. So that quality and that score, we're able to provide back as well. And then we can get that to where it needs to go on our client's behalf, or we, just as we can receive the data via DDEX or CWR, we can return the data as well. JSON, of course, is preferred. And then we also have templated several templated CSVs that we populate as well. So if that is needed, we can take the time to accommodate that also. So a great example of distribution is, and this is an example of what we receive from a client. This was about all that this particular metadata we had for this. And so let's go to the next one. So in addition to actually changing the album and release name and getting very specific on the tracks to meet this particular DSP standard, we were also able to fill in some performer roles. Also, you see composition date there, the word type. So we do enhance the data when needed with additional information that our clients are needing. We just need the sources to get that data and then for to train Ray appropriately business. Cool. So it's been awesome to see the adoption of Ray with third parties. And let's go ahead and advance, and I'll talk through this stuff. But and as far as who is using it, we're seeing those that are licensing content. They could be someone that is licensing for a particular streaming service, and they just need to, who are the rights holders, right? So that they can pay them. Also, turns out we're a payments company, so we can help with that as well. But that's another product demonstration for another time. But then also digital service providers are getting a lot of data from a lot of different places. And then we've actually integrated with a few content management systems where within the CMS, you can actually say enhance, and it will hit our API and enhance that data. So let's go to the blockchain here. Perfect. So we have a great partnership with .vc. They've been incredible to work with. But whether it's blockchain or any other technology, that technology is, that you have to have clean data to start with going in. And so that's, it's been awesome for Xaxos to be that first step there. It's also been really cool to be able to delineate between the public data and the private data. All the data that we've been looking at is public data. But there are a few use cases of Ray being used within, I like to say, within a company's four virtual walls, meaning that we actually don't touch the data. We give you an instance of the framework, and we train that data with internal resources there. And then, of course, big thing, maximum sound recording to the musical version. That's okay. Keep going. Cool. And then, just from there, you have the ability to know what you're writing on the blockchain, that which is on that virtual conveyor belt, right? For it to be correct. And from that point on, if it's on the blockchain, it should stay correct, right? Because it's the authorities that are making those amendments from there. So, cool. And we did well getting through. Our goal is to get through in time to have lots of questions. So I really wanted to give the audience a chance to dig in. We've got two of our brightest minds on the line as well to help answer questions. And so please ask away. And Nicole, you said they would need to type their questions, right?
Yeah, this is Henrik here from Music Biz. In order to log your questions in, you're going to use the typing Q&A sheet on the webinar control panel. It looks like we have two queued up as of right now.
I guess I'm going to address the question. I just sent a response about how we're going to, whether or not we can manage stems. The short answer to that right now is no. But in the future, what we want to be able to do is extend our core framework to be able to create what's called a locality-sensitive hash fingerprint for audio, so that in extension to matching metadata, we'll be able to use that audio file in conjunction with the metadata to resolve all of these things at the same time. So it's definitely something that's not immediately available, but it's on the radar for sure.
Steelers, thank you for that, Steve. I want to use data cleaning and enhancing services, what is the pricing? Thank you for asking. We have basically do our pricing based upon API calls or a unit of work within that. And it's dependent upon the volume as to the how much each unit of work is. So the larger the volume, the less the per call. And we have a very straightforward rate card that we can send over to anyone that wants to know. But what it ends up being is, if you want all the data points, if it's not a lot of volume, it could be anywhere between 25 cents to $3 or work with that. But if you're using the API, it's calculated automatically. And if not, then we can, in our delivery, we include that. Yeah. Lindsay, anything more you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it very well. It's all volume based and has to do with which data points you would in fact like to collect.
Thank you. Oh, there are a lot of questions. I just didn't have the box open. Apologies, everyone. Let's see. How does the metadata help the artists themselves? Lindsay, let's talk about maybe Beth Wilson Chapman or one of the other artists that.
Sure. So while we deal with a lot of enterprise level clients, we also have dealt with individual artist catalogs, writer catalogs. We've dealt with estates before. And even some of the folks that we've dealt with have kept track of this metadata literally on paper. Some of them have it in spreadsheets. But really what Ray can do for artists themselves and writers themselves is give them a sense of how they are being represented in the marketplace. So while we produce this really nice representation of all their works, we also have access to all this data, so we can pull all this information and say, hey, this is how you are being represented with this DSP. This is how this PRO is tracking you there, which can be useful in a number of different ways. One is to audit any sort of payments that they may or may not be receiving. Another can be to improve how they are showing up in digital services. So one great example was one of the artist catalogs that we dealt with had no secondary genre information. And this is a particular data point that when you're searching for music in Spotify or Deezer or whatever, genre greatly impacts the search results there. So there are little pieces there beyond just the financial benefit of having all of the right data to attribute payment to. There, as the video stated, there are $2 billion in unclaimed royalties that are out there. This is one way to get closer to collecting that by being able to not only link records, but find discrepancies in how folks are represented in terms of their interested party identifier numbers. But yeah, just greater visibility, really peace of mind, and having real control over some digital assets, which for many artists, especially ones that have had successful careers over a long time, have kind of gotten out of control. This is a great way to gain control over that and have real peace of mind on your catalog.
Yeah, one of my favorite examples of that too is especially some of the, I would say, larger artists are always surprised at how many lullaby versions of their music is out there, or that they didn't know about, right? Or karaoke versions of their music it's out there. And also, I love the stat from Cobalt of there being over 700,000 places that revenue can happen in the world. So points of revenue for that. And so our goal is to make all of that transparent, available. So, cool. Hey, Dave. Thanks for the question, dude. Let's see. How long does it take to enhance and return the output via API? Great question. So, cool. So we have two. If we have a data set we call background, and data set's a bit misleading because it's not like a single data set. But background is BKGD, or best known good data. And so that's our pre-linked data. And we've made some of that available via the API, the public API. When you go to royalties.ai, it's actually hitting some of that. In other words, if it is pre-linked, then it's no second, right? And so you get that data instantaneously. Now that which doesn't get a match, thankfully Ray doesn't just throw up his hands and say, oh well. It actually gets added to a task queue, and then begins learning and trying to match to other data sets, or to get better matches within the same data sets. And so that will be returned via a webhook, and that could be minutes later, it could be hours later, it could be a couple days later. But all of that we're looking to make transparent via the API. So it could be instantaneous if there's pre-link, or it could be later if there's no deadline. All right. Let's see. What if different multiple parties are holding rights on the same IP for various use cases for the same time and territory? And I think about this the same.
Maybe talk a little bit about how we weight different sources and how you can weight them yourself.
Totally, yeah. Okay, great. We get data from a lot of different places, and the closer to the source we can get the data, or an authoritative source, the better, right? And so we're going to weight the sources of data, which plays into what is being surfaced as the end result. And you can set a confidence level of what data you want to be. That will determine what data is being returned. But if I let's say I get data directly from a very popular DSP, and I get data directly from a crowdsourced source, I'm going to weight that DSP because of that direct relationship likely higher, at least on some data points, than I would the crowdsourced. Now, if the crowdsourced source has data points that the DSP didn't have, and we see a consistency of our clients saying, yes, that's correct, right? This is right. Then that confidence, at least for those particular data points, will get higher. And so that's just part of over time. It's going to get stronger. But we have taken the sources into consideration when weighting what is surface. What are the core metadata? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I see that question as well.
Cool. What are the core metadata? And I'm just going straight down the line. What are the core metadata fields available, and are they able to add those based on quantity? Great question. So we have 22 data fields that we pretty much just always surface. And we do actually call them core. With that, there's 16 master reporting and 6 publishing. However, we do have quite a bit more than those 22. And so based on client need, if we have that data point available, then we surface that for that particular client. Classical is a great example of that. those that on the call that know me know I kind of always go back to classical because it's my love of fashion. So sorry about that. You know, like the words table. You know, what type of word is this piece? Also the composition date. You know, things like that. You saw those data points in there. That's not part of the core 22, but we can surface that. And then we get requests for data types all the time. I see the next question is going to have to do with Disney. Yes, we're all about Disney, and excited about that, and looking just surface that. So we're like, you know, well on our way to having as this works that we match to. Mood would be another, or voice data would be another. So we do adapt for the client's needs. And keep in mind, the client can use Ray independent of our sources, right? So there's a very large book publisher that use Ray to create family IDs for this hardback is the same as this paperback is the same as this volume as this series, right? All this data from their 9 different sources, linking all of that together. Have you found the identifiers valuable for contributor/artist disambiguation? From a Ray perspective, we can't say that we have found it valuable. I can say that we absolutely will find it valuable. I have been excited about the adoption of Izzy within the industry, and I think it makes a lot of sense. So Brian, stand by, and we'll see how valuable it is for disambiguation as soon as we have that as a service, which I'm optimistic will be very soon. Managing response is probably related to use other questions. I think we got that. How do you work with non-US copyright data issue being mass reporting publishing data? Great question. So one of the things that we've seen as we began to work with international clients is that the master recording percentage rate remains very, very high, but on the publishing side, it's not low, but lower than it is here stateside. And a big part of that is because of access to the data. So we're looking to partner with more international companies and to resolve the disambiguation between a lot of that and and Megan, let me know if I didn't answer that question. Oh, well, there's a lot of questions. Okay, keep going. How many works or recordings do you have in your database? Cool. So, and on the master recording side, we are the last I looked, it was 68,330,000+. So that's on the master side. On the publishing side, I'd have to check that. I believe we're about 30% of that master recording has been matched to publishing, which I've been looking at right now. So really looking to source more publishing information. How do you make the links between works and recordings? Is it collected from the sources, but private and public, or is it generated by Exactly AI? So Stephen, when we were talking about this the other day, you explained it beautifully. Barbara's question. Yeah.
The reason why most people can't make that type of link is because a lot of times the metadata is not the same. And that's what's different about Ray. It's what Chris hit on earlier in his description of why it's different. Music metadata is a very complex, dense graph of relationships. And in most scenarios, when people are writing algorithms to try to do this, they're simply ignoring that. But in the scenario of Ray, we're actually leveraging those relationships to make more informed decisions. So instead of just looking at the metadata alone, technically, yes, it is generated by Exactly AI because we're utilizing this densely connected graph of music metadata to understand how a particular rider might be associated with a sound recording, or how a musical work is connected to a sound recording through this complex series of relationships.
Awesome, thank you, man. And I apologize for the noise here. Let's see. How is exactions priced? We got into that. Will your API be redundant if the data is pushed to the blockchain? I love this question, Daniel, and I certainly hope so. Like that would be amazing, right? You know, if because this is certainly this data problem is certainly a solvable problem, and we believe we have the right methods to solve it. The main thing I see is that humans are involved, right? And part of the reason we got here was because of the fragmented approach with human input of the data. And so, again, that would be super cool if we got to that point with the adoption of blockchain. But I think we're a long way from there. Do you share revenue with data providers? Great question. That is like something that we have talked a lot about, and we absolutely see how this could serve as a data marketplace, if you will, and are totally that's really would love to find a way to do that. So currently, the way that we do this is all of the data that we deal with, that we surface to others, and share. First, we have to have permission, right? And secondly, we draw a fine line in the sand, or a clear line in the sand, to say we're only going to deal with public information. So the way that I describe it to the team, if you're in Nashville and you walk into Grimey's record shop, thankfully Grimey still exists, and you pick up the vinyl, the data that you're looking at as you peruse that vinyl is what we're surfacing. I think that's the space for the backend collection of the publishing rights and metadata. How do folks know this is my work and pay through to these other sources for payment to me? Cool. So that's going to be based upon the identifiers for you. You of course need to register with a bureau or other collective society, and that identifier, that IPI for you, is what would be used to pay through. If I didn't answer your question, feel free to hit us up afterwards, because we're almost out of time, so I'm going to fly through. What if different multiple parties are holding rights in LP? I think we talked about that. Okay, in this era, can this help prevent piracy? I think it can promote payment for music. Knowing who to pay is the hardest piece of the puzzle. And so, as far as our North Star, we know we have arrived when those of us that are on this call can create a UGC piece, a user-generated content, and for Ray to be able to learn who to attribute and who to pay. So, as far as prevent piracies, probably not. As far as making it obsolete, we'll sure shoot for it. Alright, so I'm a metadata creator and distributor for the publisher, so I'm ensuring the data meets CSP standards so that at bullet points will be listed in terms of the ways they could help me. Distributor. So, in addition to the DSP standards, enhancing the data, right? Also, if you are needing to do the payment, then we can help with the payment as well. Usually the answer to this question is anything you're doing manually. Let's throw it at Ray and see what happens. Does your API provide a confidence level? Yes. What is the threshold recurring? Our default threshold is 80%, and then we go from there. I know it's really noisy. It's getting more noisy. But yeah, we don't start there. How to update student data get sorted? I went over that. Every user way as a source to express to arrange distribution of royalties. Yes, that is the goal. Though we do not want to be the source of truth at this moment. We rely on our customers for that. What happens if two data sources are rated the same in a conflict? Well, if they are, because of its relationship on the graph, this is a much longer thing. This will require a longer answer, but basically, that's why another reason why graph is important. But because of its relationship to other entities that are on the graph, will determine what is surfaced or presented. Do you store ownership percentages? I was waiting for this question. Only in that internal scenario. We are not interested in private data and feel like ownership percentages is private information. So only on those instances where folks are using Ray for an internal scenario within their four virtual walls. But we do not surface that to others. That remains with the rights holder themselves. All right. Oh, there's more. What's the key to keeping your metadata as simple as possible to prevent future mix-ups and promote efficiency of the process? Really, the feedback from those that are using the data, right? As we first with iPhone screens, less real estate, and then now with a voice. Simple is always better. How am I going to interact with the data? So I think the market has decided, or it will continue to decide what is simple, and that's what we're going to master. What basis did you establish a confidence threshold of 80% rather than higher or lower? Good question. It's really just this. So part of what we do when we work with our customers is we want to do two things. We want to work closely and to provide a style guide, like, hey, if we hit this style guide, this is meet your expectations, and also what threshold would you like to be? We started at 80%. There are actually some use cases where it makes sense to have a lower threshold, right? Like we identify covers for one particular distributor. You're going to have a high threshold at the track level, but a lower threshold at the artist level. Taylor Swift with an E is not the same as Taylor Swift with an O, but the person with an E will certainly try to get those things. So tuning that down would be the way to go. And when you read a question, keep the question here. Yeah, keep mumbling. Sorry, I do mumble a lot. And if I were a fast typer, I absolutely would. And but I do apologize for the noise in the background and my MMTA. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we're at the end of questions. And also for those who had trouble hearing some of this stuff, please know that there's going to be a recording of this webinar posted on musicbiz.org. So you'll be able to review from start to finish, and in case you missed any questions, you'll be able to look at those as well.
Cool. And if it's helpful, maybe we can, for Ryan, or if it was a common theme for others, maybe we can take these questions, type them up, and post the answers. Would MusicBiz mind helping distribute that if we did that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for asking that, Ryan.
All right, so we want to say thank you to our presenters today. This was valuable. This was a really great presentation, and thank you for everything you put together.
And really appreciate you having us.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for everyone who joined. That means a lot.
Today. Sweet.